Okay, we're at the Mishnah of Gimel Amud Aleph 23a, the bottom. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Hafa Ratzeh La'adir Chavero Sheyochal Etzlo. Even in a case where a person who makes a neder on his friend that he should eat by him. So he says, Reuven, look, I want you to come eat my bee. You always make excuses, and now I'm not taking excuses anymore. And I'm making a neder. If you don't eat by me, you're not benefiting from me anymore. He's doing this neder in order to scare his friends. His friend eats by him, but at the same time, he doesn't want the neder to kick in. If the guy's really busy, his friend Reuven, and he says, "Look, I'm sorry about your neder. I don't care about your neder. I got to go home." He doesn't want that neder to kick in. So what do you do in such a situation where you just want the neder to be used as like a threat? So even in a case where a person wants to make a neder on his friend so they should eat by him, Yomar. Here the Bach changes it to kol, or here the Mishnah says Yomar lo, tell him, but he should say Yomar kol neder shani atid lidor hu batel. Any neder, so the translation is as follows: any neder that I'm going to make a neder on, any neder that I'm going to say, should be invalid. Ubilvad, as long as sheyezachur b'shat haneder. It should be remembered by him at the time that he makes the promise. So the Mishnah is saying as follows: if you want to try scaring your friend and you don't want the neder to kick in, you want to try scaring your friend by saying, hey, if you don't come eat by me, you're never going to benefit from me, but you don't want that neder really kicking in, what you should do is, and we're going to see the Gemara that's going to go a little back and forth till we get to this point, but what you should do is, and the Gemara is going to say, do it on Rosh Hashanah, make an announcement, and say, look, any neder that I'm going to make in the future, it's invalid. I don't want to be stuck with Nedarim. So if I happen to say a neder, it's invalid. As long as at the time when I said this neder, Reuven, if you don't come to my house, you're not going to be benefit from me. As long as at that moment it came to my mind, neders are invalid, then it would indeed be invalid. And that's the way, a tactic, you could scare your friend and not be liable for the neder.
In what other cases we can use this one? I mean, any neder that I will declare will be in the future shall be no. Okay, we said this. I'm sure this will be. This is not only for the case that we invite friends.
Right.
So what other cases?
I think many other cases. I don't know about tzedakah. Like you say, you want to say tzedakah. $500. Oh, I'm in a neder. That's all good. So I don't know about that one.
So we can go back.
But other such nedarim, and the truth is, actually, we're going to see in the Ran a little bit that it has to be in the categories of what you suspect. So let's say categories have to do with bread, or categories have to do with food. If I ever say, because I know I have issues with my diet, up and down, I fluctuate. If I ever say I make a neder, I'm never eating food again, this food, that food, it's invalid. I've been stuck with all these neders, and I feel like I diet, and I want to eat again, and this, I always, confused. I'm making an announcement. If I ever say anything about food, so it has to be on certain categories that you are invalidating your neders in advance.
Okay,
that's what's going on. Okay. Says the Gemara. Gemara now is going to ask a question, and it's taking on that the guy, the inviter, told his friend Reuven to his face, come to my house or else I'm not going to benefit from you. Make a neder. And any neder that I make is batel. That he's telling him. And he's like, and the Gemara's going to ask, what do you mean? You're telling him he's obviously not going to come to your house because he knows it's going to be batel. He knows it's all a hoax. That's the Gemara asks. Kevan de Amar, since he said, Kol neder she'ani atid lidor, every neder that I'm going to make a neder on in the future, ye batel, is going to be invalid. Lo shamale, v'lo ati ba'adeh. He's not going to listen to him. This friend Reuven, the invitee, the guy that's invited, he's not going to listen to him. He's not going to come in. V'lo ati ba'adeh. He's not going to come after him. The Gemara is taking on that you're actually saying, right? That's what the Mishnah says. Yomar should say, any neder that I'm going to make is going to be invalid. So, if you're sitting in front of him, it's not going to work. Your trick is not going to work. So, says the Gemara, Chasure mechsera. No, there's a piece missing here in the Mishnah. Ve'achiktani. And this is what the Mishnah meant to say. Harotzeh shiyochal etzlo chavero umesarev bo. You wanted your friend to eat at your house, and he refuses. Mesarev, he refuses. Umadiro. And then you make a neder on him. Nidre ziruzinu. It's nidre ziruzin. As we learned before, it's a nidre ziruzin. You just wanted to do it like, so I'll sell to you for 4 or 2. You did it in order to get him to 3. You did it in order to get him to come to your house. It's a nidre ziruzin, and you don't even have to ask a she'ela on it, and it's fine. And now, second point in that Mishnah is, separate from the story, and how do you know, how do you want a situation where your nedarim are not going to be valid the entire year? Yamod beRosh Hashanah. Stand on Rosh Hashanah. V'yomar, and say, Kol neder shani ati lidor, any neder that I'm going to make a neder on in the future, yebatel, will be invalid. Will be valid as long as she is zechur b'shat neder, that you should be remember it at the time of the neder. The time I make the neder, I remember that, I already invalidated the neder. Okay, we're going to ask a question on that in a moment. But that's the chasura mechser over here. So the case, says the Gemara, is not that you told him the trick, because then he's not going to come to your house. He knows it's a fake neder. Rather, the case was the Mishnah is really 2 pieces. Piece number 1 is you want to invite your friend, you want to make this neder, hey, come to my house, if not, I'm going to make an neder. That's ziruzin. You didn't really mean that. It's like the guy that wants to sell it for 4, but really he wants 3. The guy wants to buy it for 2, he really means 3. You want to just move him from his mentality. His mentality is he doesn't come to your house, you want to move him from that. So that's the point of your neder. And a second point, if you want your nedarim to be invalid for the future, for the whole year, on Rosh Hashanah, stand up and make this announcement that any neder that you make is going to be invalid. As long as you remember it at the time that you make a future neder, which on that point we're going to discuss. Okay. Let's take a look at the Ran, Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, at the bottom, 3 lines up from the bottom. Kevan de'amar neder v'chule, v'lo shamale, v'lo ati legabe, lemecha ba'adeh. If you're going to tell him, I'm making this neder, he's not going to come to eat at your house. He knows it's a hoax. Lefi shekvar yodea hamezuman, the invited guy already knows. She'en neder chalalav. There's no neder on him. Shekvar batlu hamezamin, because the guy that the inviter, the guy that's inviting, he already made it batel. So you're telling him that it's a fake neder? Says the Gemara, says the Ran, ubedinhu, really, the Gemara could have answered, damar madir bechashai, that the guy saying the neder, he said it quietly, so that this guy Reuven, the guy that's invited, should not hear. So that should be the obvious case. We're talking about here, the guy whispered it. Nevertheless, the Mishnah could not have used that example, that he said it quietly. Since the Mishnah started by saying even harotze ladir af harotze, mashma dehanam mishum nidre zinuzin mutar. Af over here, it means even. That means you're coming to connect to a past case. The past case was the past Mishnah, which was the first Mishnah in our Perek, which is talking about nidre ziruzin. Af, even this is a nidre ziruzin. So you see that here it's talking about nidre ziruzin, and you don't even need velav mishum chashai. Bottom line, velav mishum chashai sheitna v'imken. It's not because of, I said it in a low tone, but rather velav mishum tanai sheitna v'imken. It's not, so meaning the reason why it's invalid is because it's a ziruzin. That's the av over there. I'm connecting to that, and not because I whispered it. Ve'od dibikya hagavna askinan hechitani ubilvad sheyezachur. Pshita shu zachur. Shebeshat haneder u'metneh. Also, says the Ran, what does it mean that as long as you remember the neder? Obviously, you remember the neder. If you're saying it right there and then, so the Ran wants to show us that the Mishnah is written in a way where there's something off, meaning it's 2 separate cases. And that's what the Gemara answers, that indeed there's 2 separate cases over here. and not that you spoke it out, and not that even you didn't even speak it out in silence, because the Av is connecting to the past Mishnah, which means that this case is a case of Ziruzin. That I'm just coming here to motivate my friend to come to my house, and therefore the neder is not even a neder. Okay. Okay. Gemara now asks a question. We are 2, 4, 6 lines down. Asks the Gemara a question. So on the second law of this Mishnah is, if you want your neders not to work out, to be invalid in the future, make an announcement on Rosh Hashanah. So any neder that I make, it's going to be invalid, as long as you remember that at the time of your neder. This asks the Gemara a strong question on that. Izachur akre letnae v'kayem lenidre. If you're going to remember at the time of your neder, then you are undoing that neder you made on Rosh Hashanah. Because what's happening now? You made a neder on Rosh Hashanah. Let's say about bread. If I ever make a neder about bread and I'm not going to eat it anymore, it's invalid. Okay, 6 months later, you say, I'm making a neder, I'm not eating bread. Now, that's invalid because my Rosh Hashanah neder. As long as you remember the Rosh Hashanah neder. So at the time that I'm making this neder, I don't want to eat bread anymore. I'm remembering that I invalidated every neder. But why are you saying it then? Why are you saying I'm not eating this bread? It must be you're actually undoing that Rosh Hashanah one. The opposite effect over here. What does it mean that as long as at the time of the neder, 6 months later, you remembered that you invalidated neder of Rosh Hashanah? It's not going to help. The opposite effect is going to happen. I'm going to uphold my current neder that I'm saying now. Because if I'm remembering that it's invalid, don't say anything. It's invalid. You won't have to say anything with this bread.
And as long as we are remembering, we just can't say that Bli neder and get out of
Bli
it.
neder is not.
Bli neder is nothing.
That's nothing.
Bli neder is nothing.
That's
So
nothing.
Bli neder is like you said, nothing. Who cares? But so now
But this guy's making a
making a neder.
But I'm telling you, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, like in Rosh Hashanah, I'm invalidating anything that has to do with bread. If I ever say I don't want to eat bread anymore, it's invalid. Okay, 6 months later,
But why say
I'm
it?
not eating bread. Hold on a second.
No, the
Remember that.
gives them clearance. Effective is what you're saying. The second neder has no relevance unless we're seeing.
But if it has no relevance because I already canceled it.
right.
But says the Gemara says, as long as I remember now 6 months later that I invalidated it, then why are you saying it?
Right.
So if I'm saying it, maybe I want to invalidate that. That's the Gemara's question.
Does it mean remember?
He's regretting that.
Does it mean remember immediately afterwards?
6 months
Now
after
you
Rosh Hashanah is
say
Pesach, so you can eat bread anyways. Don't worry.
right. So the guy, you make the neder. The person makes the neder Rosh Hashanah. Now he speaks off the cuff, and he makes another neder. Is it saying that immediately afterwards he says, "Oh,
Is it
now I
or
remember,"
like a day
or
later?
Does he remember before and then goes ahead and makes the neder?
He needs to remember from before because the original
Because
Mishnah.
what would be different? Let's say he
original-
off the cuff now says, "I'm not eating bread,"
Original example
and
is
doesn't
to-
remember Rosh Hashanah, and time moves on. Now maybe that whole.
Then it invalidates it.
No, I don't think that's the case. Also, Gemara is not right about it because the original aim is to convince someone. It's not just unvalidate the neder.
To get the wrong opinion.
It's not like maybe the example is not good that I'm not going to make any neder about bread because like the original example is I'm not going to come to your house if you don't come to me right now. So the aim here is not to make a neder but just to convince you to come with me.
Right.
Like otherwise, like if if you are going to make a neder about bread for any reason, you are not convincing anyone. You have no benefit. So it's not the same example at all.
No, we're in the second.
It's not
the case of
comparable.
the inviting. That was the first. The Gemara just established it's two separate things. The case of the inviting, that was the first case. I'm coming here to convince you to come. That's why it's not a neder. The second thing is, if you want to invalidate neders in the future, make an announcement Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
As long as you remember at the time of my future neder.
But that's the original Mishnah. which
So
is
the-
the
is
example
that
for
The Gemara, but the Gemara did a chasurim exer. The Gemara separated those
Is
two
that
cases.
what the Lashon is saying though? As long as, so at the time, so prior to
That's the
making
Gemara's
second
question.
neder?
So that's the Gemara's question.
At the time you are making that nether. I think I understood.
Yeah,
that.
that's clearly the Gemara's question. The Gemara's taking that on.
He's already taking it off.
The first nether is already
He's
taken
already
off. Yeah,
saying-
you don't have to say anything else
Right,
afterwards.
that's it.
Yeah, the Gemara's taking that on. That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara's question is, let's read it again inside. Izachur, if you're going to remember now, akre l'tanaye, you are undoing your oker, the tanai, the condition that you made on Rosh Hashanah. V'kayim l'nidre, and you're mekayim your current nether today, 6 months from that past Rosh Hashanah. So what does it mean? As long as you remember. So Abaye has a very easy answer. Amar Abaye, Tani, no, sorry, the Mishnah is not like that. Rather, say in the Mishnah, uvilvad shelo yezachur b'shat haneder. As long as you don't remember the time of the neder. Meaning, so now it makes sense. What happens? Rosh Hashanah, I say, anything I say about bread is invalid. 6 months later, I say, I don't want to eat bread. And I don't remember what I said. I forgot. And now I remember, like, oh my gosh, invalid. That's it. That's what makes sense. Because I invalidated it on Rosh Hashanah. 6 months later, I forgot what I said on Rosh Hashanah. And I say, I don't want to eat bread anymore. Then I remembered, oh, whatever my nether was 6 months ago, I invalidated it already, Rosh Hashanah. That's it. So Abaye is very good. As long as you don't remember. Because if you remember the Shat HaNeder, then you're undoing that original Tanai. So Rava says no. We're going with this wording of that you do remember. Let's see how he explains it. Rava says, "Leolam kedamrinan meikara." Really, it's as we mentioned originally that you are remembering today. 6 months later, you are remembering. Leolam kedamrinan meikara. So what's the case? How does that work out? You're undoing your Rosh Hashanah neder. Hachab ma'askin, and the case over here is kigon sheitna beRosh Hashanah. You made a condition on Rosh Hashanah. Velo yada b'ma hitna. You didn't know. Meaning today you kind of forgot. I know I invalidated my neders on Rosh Hashanah, but I didn't know what category I was. I forget which categories I invalidated. You didn't say I invalidated all neders. I invalidated neders of bread, of wine, of this. But I don't know now, 6 months later when I said I don't want to eat bread, I don't know which ones I invalidated. Vehashta kanadar. And now, today, 6 months later, I made a neder. So we did it again. Kigon. Sheitna b'Rosh Hashanah v'lo yada b'ma hitna. You made a Tanai on Rosh Hashanah, but now you don't know what that Tanai is. Vehashta kanadar. And today, 6 months later, I made a neder. Izachur b'shat ha-neder. If you remember at the time that you make this neder, I remembered, oh yeah, I made a thing to invalidate all bread, and now I'm saying something about bread. Ve'amar, so izachur b'shat ha-neder, ve'amar al dat ha-rishona ani noder, nadre let be-mamasha. So now if you say, oh, I remember now what the neder was. V'amar al dat harishona ani noder, nadre lit b'mamasha. And you said, on my original thing that I said on Rosh Hashanah, that's what I'm making a neder. And your neder doesn't have any, your neder of today of 6 months later doesn't have anything to it. Because I remembered that I invalidated it. Now I remembered what the topic was, what the category was. Al-data rishona ani noder. So you said, I'm doing this neder with intent to keep that first neder Rosh Hashanah. Nidre lit b'mamasha. There's nothing with this. There's nothing to his new neder. Lo amar al data rishona ani noder. If he does not say, I'm having in mind that first original neder Rosh Hashanah, akre l'tanae v'kayem nidre. He is he undoes his neder of Rosh Hashanah, and his current neder of today kicks in. So let's speak out Rava again. So our thing was like this: if a person wants to get to invalidate his neder, what does he do? On Rosh Hashanah, make an announcement. Any neder about, let's say, bread going forward is invalid. Now, as long as you remember at a later time, call it 6 months from now, as long as you remember in a later time that about this, you remember about it. So the question was, how do you remember about it? If you're remembering about it when then it means you want to undo that Rosh Hashanah neder. Says Rava. So the case is that you are remembering it at the time of the 6 month neder. What's the case? You made a condition on Rosh Hashanah, but now today, 6 months later, you forgot what category it was. And now you made a neder 6 months later. If he remembers at the time of his neder 6 months later, he remembers, oh yeah, it was about bread. And now you're making a thing about bread. So now you just remembered, but you're saying it at the same time. But then you say, no, I made this neder with intent to keep that original neder. Nadre lit be mamasha. Then your neder of today is nothing. So the guy says, yeah, I know I made a neder back then in Rosh Hashanah. I forget what it was about. I'm making a neder today. I'm not eating bread. Oh, 1 second. I remember that it was about bread. So no, I want to keep that neder of Rosh Hashanah. Then your neder of today is nothing. Lo amar al dat Rishon ani noder. The guy did not say, I want to keep that neder. Then today's neder undoes that neder. So he says, I'm making a neder, I'm not eating bread anymore. Oh yeah, I made a neder in Rosh Hashanah, and everything's invalid. And he didn't say, I'm going to undo that now. That means you're keeping what you're saying now, and that kicks in. So Rava is saying a case where, because of this uncertainty, because you kind of forgot for a moment what you made a neder, the remembering kicked in when you said your second neder. So I'm making a neder not to eat bread. Oh yeah, I made a neder to invalidate those neders. Okay, I'm keeping that first neder. That first neder is kept. If you don't say that, then your current neder undoes that. So I'm getting rid of my bread. Oh yeah, I said I'm invalidated that. Let me forget. Oh, it sticks now. That's how Rava figures out how you could remember about the neder at the time that you're saying the second neder. Okay. Let's see the run. Rava Amar. Rava Amar kegon sheitna beRosh Hashanah velo yada mima yitna. Rava says that's the case, that you were not clear at the time. You didn't remember what your category was. At the time of today's neder of 6 months later, you didn't remember what you said in Rosh Hashanah. Rava lo ati leflugi ale debaye. The Ran says a chidush. Rava is not coming to argue on Abaye. Abaye answered was, you didn't remember what happened. Rava says, no, I could give you a case where you do remember, but you remembered at the last moment because you originally forgot. So Rava is not coming to argue on Abaye. The Modehu, he agrees. The kol she'eno zocher t'nao klal b'shat nidro. If you don't remember at all what you said on Rosh Hashanah, ha-neder batel, the neder of today, 6 months later, is invalid. Because I invalidated them already Rosh Hashanah. I totally forgot about them. So he agrees to Abaye about that. Ela, but the lonichale the shibush alishna dematnitin. But he doesn't want to play around with the words of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, as long as you remember. So Abaye said, no, it means as long as you don't remember. Rava didn't want to play around with the words. So how do we fit it into as long as you remember? That's why he said that the olam is a ktani. You remembered. Okay, and he explains the rest of the Mishnah that way. In this type of situation, now there's two laws. If you totally forgot about your Rosh Hashanah neder, the time of your neder today, 6 months later, neder batel, the neder of today is batel. Aval, but If you remembered your condition a little bit, my Rosh Hashanah thing, I remembered a little bit, but not fully. Kigon, for instance, what's this for instance? Kigon you made it a condition on Rosh Hashanah, but you don't remember what the condition was. Klomar, is it to say, sheitna al davar meyuchad? You made it tonight a condition on something specific. Ve'eno zocherim al pat or al yain. You don't remember, did I make it on bread or wine or similar situations. Aval zocher hu sheitna b'kei agavra. But he remembers that he made a certain type of condition that it's going to be invalid. I don't remember if it was wine. I don't remember if it was bread. If he says now, today 6 months later, in his new neder, he says, "But hold on a second, I want to keep my original neder, Rosh Hashanah." Klomar, she'im mitchila. Here the Ran adds more that you actually don't remember even at the time of the new neder. But he's saying like this: if my original condition al neder zeh, meaning I know I wrote it down in my house, I want to go later, I go check it out what I wrote down for my neder. So you'll find out exactly. So you say im. If I originally made a condition on this neder, shivatel, that it should be invalid, but I still want that to take effect, and I don't want my new neder to take effect. I want that Rosh Hashanah neder to take effect. But and then he remembers later, shal davar zeh shenadar achshav hitna betchila levatel nidre lo it b'mamasha. And then later on he remembers, or he went to his house and he had it written down, whatever it was. Then that original Rosh Hashanah neder comes into play. Or if he says, no, he didn't. He does not say, oh, I want to keep that Rosh Hashanah one. But then he gets rid of his Rosh Hashanah neder and he keeps his current neder. Since at the time of today's neder, 6 months later, he remembers he made a condition. But he doesn't remember the specific. Was it bread? Was it wine? If he wanted to keep that Rosh Hashanah neder, he shouldn't have made any neder now. In order not to uproot it. So if you didn't remember exactly, don't say nothing, or say I want to keep my Rosh Hashanah intact. You didn't say that, then your current neder is intact. And that the Mishnah says, as long as you remember, this is what it means to say. As long as you remember in your mouth. The Ran adds this word over here, that you have to speak it out at the time of your today's neder. I have to speak out, not in my mind only, but I have to speak it out. So a guy says like this, Rosh Hashanah, he makes a neder about bread. No more bread. And whatever I say about bread is going to be invalid. 6 months later, he says, I'm making a neder, I'm never going to eat bread again. But hold on a second, now he has to speak it up. Hold on a second, I made a neder Rosh Hashanah, I forget what it was about, was it bread, was it wine? I want to keep that neder. Everything was spoken out. He goes home, he figures out, yeah, there was bread. Okay, that original Rosh Hashanah one stays in play. If he doesn't mention that, and he just says, I want to make a neder today, not eating bread, and he doesn't mention his Rosh Hashanah neder, then the one of today stays intact. So that's how Rava could fit and keep the words of the Mishnah.
And in the time in between, the second one as well.
What do you mean the time in between?
Yeah, for example, he said
he
he made the second neder, and he remembered the Rosh Hashanah neder 3 days later. So for these 3 days, the second neder is valid, right?
Yeah, it seems like it'll be valid. He only found that. Yeah.
Because he didn't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Okay. One second here. Just the Ran says the halacha is like Rava, and the truth is he anyway says that Rava agrees to Abaye. The Rambam also goes with that. Okay. Here he just says something interesting. Venire, if you see like halfway down the next run, Ulin and Halacha, then halfway down there's a period. First one on the line is Nedarim. It says Halacha He, there's a Venire. Shema she'omrim k'tzat kehilot b'yom kippurim kol nidre. He says, and that some kehilot say, nowadays every kehillah, Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, everybody says kol nidre. He says that some kehilot on Yom Kippur says kol nidre, ve'esareh, ledavar zeh mitkavenim. They're intending this Gemara, that's what their intention is. Levatel nedarim sheyidru la'achar miken. To get rid of nedarim that I'm going to make afterwards. אלא שלשונה משובש, שהם מתירים נדרים שעברו. So he says, but the wording, it sounds like you want to get rid of past nedarim, but it's talking about the ones that are in the future. וזה אין לו עניין אלא לנדרים הבאים לאחר מכן. רבנו יעקב ז"ל היה מתקן הלשון כדי שיהיה משמעותו להבא. Lomar kol nidre ve'esare di asarna ve'di chamarna. Everything is in the future. Kulu kamotz, kamatz, kedei she'nire lehaba, some of the future. But then the Ran argues on the Venrayu lomar ken, kedei she'lo yikelu rosham b'nedarim, that Tana mesatam lasetume. I think he argues, he says that it's going on the past. Katav Rambam, שיש מן הגאונים שאומרים שאין תנאי קודם מבטל מה שאסר עצמו לאחר מכן, אלא בנדרים. אבל לא בשבועות. You can't do this. This can only be done by nedarim, and then some say also shavuot. This concept of, okay, what I do later on, that only works for nedarim.
But it doesn't also make sense for that it will work for nedarim, because we either case do kol nidre. So right now, in the middle of the year, it comes to me, I make a neder, and 3 days later, I say, you know what, I already said kol nidre. Let the kol nidre be effective and my last neder, because kol nidre covers all the nederim.
Year to year.
So we don't even need to say this, like the one in Mishnah, and it will cover everything. Not only bread or everything is covered. So whatever we can annul any neder we want. But it shouldn't be the case.
לבטל נדרים שידרו לאחר מכן. ואין זה ראוי לומר כן כדי שלא יקלו ראשם בנדרים. I think this is what he means over here in this line, but you can't say this, but rather that it's going on the past, because then people will be lenient on their neders. So okay, I'll neder this neder because the Kol Nidre already got rid of it. And that's why I think it's going on backwards.
And we do Hatar
And yeah, before
Shana
Kippur. Yeah, that gets rid of the past.
You can do it. Because you are already regretting.
That's for the past.
Yeah, that's for the past.
Ksat
Well, like, if this works, you don't even need Atarat Nedarim because you made Kal Nidre. You're good for everything, which doesn't make sense.
That's what I think he says over here. Ve'en raui lomar ken, kedei shelo yikadu rosham b'nedarim. De'atana misatam nasatum. I don't know what that part means. Is there anything in the notes about this run? Anything about Kal Nidre? Does it say anything over there?
Yeah.
The Ran comments, the intent of Kol Nidre declaration made on Yom Kippur is to accomplish the purpose set forth in our Sugya and our Gemara, namely to disclaim any neder oath that one might utter in an unguarded moment during the course of the year, future. However, as such disclaimers are effective only in advance, but not for vows already uttered, past. The standard terminology of Kol Nidre, which refers to the past vows, would seem to be an error. Therefore, Ben Utam amends that terminology to refer to future vows. Ran, however, considers the custom of Kol Nidre improper, as the Gemara here concludes that this device not be publicized, so that people will not come to frivolous with Nedarim. We're going to see that's the next Gemara right now. Tosfot, however, defends the practice of Kol Nidre, explaining that the Gemara means to conceal this device only from Amei Haaretz, who would be prone to treat Nedarim frivolously. So it is for the future. But we don't want people to Kol Nidre, let me just say whatever I want. No, it's for Talmidei Chachamim that they know. Okay, at the end of the day, I'm covered with Kol Nidre, but I'm still going to be careful with. I have this back cover. The Aramaic formula of Kol Nidre is therefore permissible, as it remains unintelligible to the ignorant. Moreover, the Amoraim of Talmudic times, in the absence of a general basis for laxity, took Nedarim seriously, and not divulging the validity of advanced disclaimers was therefore preferable. Not telling the people you could advance your getting rid of Nedarim. Nowadays, however, the Amoraim treat Nedarim lightly in any event. It is preferable to publicize this device in order to protect them from the sin of violating Nedarim. Because people now are lenient on talking, they just say anything they want. Better to come say Kol Nidre to invalidate any future neders so that to save them from sin. Interesting. Okay, let's finish today's Gemara. We are 6 lines up from the bottom. Ravuna bar Chinena Savar lemidreshe bepirka. Ravuna bar Chinena wanted to announce this in the Bet Midrash, in the Shiur, about future. You could get rid of future nedarim. Amar le Rava. Rava told them, Tana kamisatem la situme. The Tana hid this. How did he hide it? Because you see the Tana of our Mishnah, he put these two cases together, and it made it look very right. If you want to invite your friend, right, then, but you have to announce that I'm getting rid of all nedarim. But then we said, how does that doesn't fit together? The Gemara said, no, it's 2 separate cases. So says Rava, the Tana did that on purpose. It wasn't like, oh, there was a mess up in the Mishnah. The Tana did it on purpose to not let people know of this device, of this thing that you could invalidate neders in the future. And now you want to announce it? Amar le Rava, Tana kamisatim la situme. The Tana, he hid this. So that people shouldn't be easy going on nedarim. And you want to say it in the shiur? Keep it on the low. Let people have that fear. Let people have that fear.
It's in the Gemara for 2,000 years.
It's in the Gemara here for 2,000 years. But who opens the Gemara? People that are learning. People that aren't, not to tell them the trick that they could get rid of nedarim in the future, then they'll be very lenient on nedarim going future. Rather, okay, let them worry about nedarim. Oh my gosh! But in the back of their mind, there's this thing covering. Don't let them know, because then they'll be too lenient about it. Okay, Chazak, we're going to stop over here at the Ibai Lehu, and we'll continue on Sunday, Be'ezrat Hashem. Chazak. Interesting stuff. When you think like you know it all in Nedarim, like, how much is there about it? Nedarim, but a lot going on. Chazak.